Welcome to the You Can Man podcast, episode 92. I'm Josh.
I'm Tim.
And I'm Dave.
And on this week's episode, low and slow in a C-130.
Welcome back to the You Can Man podcast, where we believe what one man can do, you can do as well. But you got to have a little help from your friends and the proper know-how. Guys, on this week's show, you want to learn how to fly a C-130, which is a massive, massive aircraft. Then we've got a guest on the show today, Chase Eriksen. Chase, say hello.
What's going on, everyone?
Chase is a pilot in the Georgia Air National Guard and currently flies the massive low and slow C-130, and I'm looking forward to hearing his journey, how he got to become a pilot to fly this aircraft. But first, guys, what's been going on?
I had a lazy weekend. Two of my family members, immediate family members, had birthdays within the past week to 10 days.
I feel like every one of your weekends is a lazy weekend.
Wow.
There you go. That's what I think about Josh.
So we, and my mother-in-law had a birthday. So over the weekend, we had 3 birthday parties like 7 times.
So you ate like 3 cakes? And
4. Not exaggerating. And so that's what we did.
Okay.
I'm not going to say I did a project.
Speaking of eating a lot of desserts and stuff, I've put on a little bit of weight since I lost everything.
Yeah.
I've been putting it back on slowly.
It's called the holidays.
And I've been tightening the belt a little bit, trying to get that back down. Is that the wrong expression?
Tightening the belt.
Sorry,
tightening the belt is the result of the hard work, right?
That would be a good thing.
That's not the right expression. What I mean,
we know what you meant.
I've been cutting the calories a little bit. Dave, what's been going on with you?
I guess, not a whole lot, but kind of the same thing, just getting fatter every day.
That's great.
But I'm working on it.
You've just dropped off the running game.
No, that's not true.
We should contrast.
Still running.
We should contrast this episode with one from like June,
right?
When we were all super hardcore.
Yeah,
and now we're ashamed.
Chase, and we don't want to leave you out of this. What's anything you got to add of what's been happening? But you can't talk about C-130 stuff yet. It's got to be something random, all right?
Just kind of hanging out with the family, enjoying a little bit of downtime. Yeah, can't complain.
Do y'all make it to the beach much? Because listeners, Chase is currently stationed in Savannah, Georgia. So I would assume y'all maybe hit up Tybee or something, no?
Yeah, Tybee, where our house is, it's actually about 3 minutes closer to go out to Hilton Head. So we'll, depending on what we want to do, we'll either bounce up to Hilton Head for the day or out to Tybee.
Nice.
Apparently, I heard this morning that Sandra Bullock is selling her house on Tybee Island. So there's that.
You are keeping up with the important
stuff. It was odd. Look, I listened to a sports show in the morning. They mentioned it. I don't know why, but apparently she's spending more time on the West Coast these days.
Good for her.
Okay. Well, let's get into the topic because I want to have enough time to ask all the questions that we have for Chase. But listeners, what we want to accomplish with this show is just to give you an idea, what in the world does it take to become a C-130 pilot? You see these massive planes flying overhead. Hopefully you're in an area of the country like we are in Marietta, Georgia, where we see these things all the time. And I think Dave actually had a question about that. But we see them quite often. Maybe you're in a part of the country where you don't see them, but They are majestic aircraft, are they not?
Majestic is like a flying elephant.
I know. It's just, I don't know. I love seeing them.
Look, it's the sound of freedom. We can all agree on that.
It really is. It really is.
More fans of freedom.
There you go.
That's right.
More fans of freedom. I love it.
Yes. Nice. Hopefully you have like a patch or something that you put on your flight jacket or something with that saying, Chase. But so, yeah, we first kind of want to start with your background because your background leading up to becoming a pilot, because I've known you for years and you come from like a video background. You were doing video work for years and then switched some major gears and decided to become a pilot. So I wanted to talk about your background and what made you want to become a pilot in the first place.
Yeah, for sure. So, growing up, my dad was an Air Force Academy grad. He flew F-16s in the Air Force. When he got hired by Delta in 1988, we've been in Atlanta ever since. So the aviation aspect has always kind of been in my family, but it's never the path that I thought I would go down. I worked my way through through school, working in the film industry as a full-time freelancer. And that's kind of the direction that I thought I was, going to go long term. But to drop a Fight Club quote, after working on TV commercials for about 8 years, I think it's, basically convincing people to buy things that they don't need with money they don't have so they can impress people they don't like. That's, kind of the gist of the advertising industry. So, I basically made the decision that I wanted to pursue something more, give back to the community, be able to serve in a capacity. Service has definitely always been a part of my family growing up. And then, ultimately just being able to give back. So
how old were you when you decided to make well, let me ask it a different way. Were you 38 years old with failing eyes when you decided I want to go be a pilot? Because that's where I'm
no,
at.
But I will say that I was older than most guys and girls who start this process, which, ultimately with my unit probably lent itself to my advantage. I would say the bulk of pilots that go through the Air Force pilot training pipeline are, your typical 22-year-old fresh college grad, just out of school pursuing a flying slot. But for me, I was 28 at the time when I was offered a job with the Georgia Guard. So, a bit older than a lot of the guys and girls that go through the process. We took our first kid to pilot training with us, and we came back to Georgia with our second. So, my experience going through the whole pipeline was a little bit different than your typical, 22-year-old kid trying to get his wings right out of school.
You were well seasoned.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
definitely.
Talk to us about what are those first steps. So let's say one of our listeners is, 28 and they're thinking, maybe I am kind of just too old for this, but that would be really cool. And I'd like to make a switch. So what are those first steps to be able to take the path that you took?
Well, even if you don't want to pursue the military aviation aspect, I'll say that there's never been a better time to get into general aviation. The medical requirements have been reduced to where people that used to be disqualified for even a private pilot's license can now go out and fly small aircraft, not for hire, just on a private, cruise around with your friends, go get $100 hamburger somewhere. So, if anybody's listening out there that said, man, you look up in the sky, you see that little Cessna 172 flying over and you're wondering what it takes to go up and do that. Really, there's pretty much nothing stopping anybody from going up for, a $100 introductory flight. But for the people that are considering the military route, there's basically 3 ways to go about it in terms of the Air Force. You can go on active duty if you do fall into that younger category, 22-year-old, kid trying to get wings. But my path was through the Air National Guard, and it's a little bit different. I probably could explain a little bit of the differences between active guard and reserve, because, everybody with the election cycle has probably seen the Army Guard and the Air Force Guard. So the big difference between active duty component, guard, and reserve is active duty is federally funded. The commander of active duty is the president. Same with the reserves. They report directly to the president. Whereas the guard, it's state funded, and the commander in chief of any state's guard is actually the governor of that state. So when you're in the guard, if you look around, you see an Army Guardsman or a Air Guardsman, chances are that's your neighbor. It could be your bartender. It could be your HVAC guy or your accountant. They're just, regular people. Most of us have normal jobs, normal civilian jobs, but we serve in a military capacity, 1 week in a month and 2 weeks out of the year. For pilots, it's a bit more. But yeah, being a guardsman is the best of both worlds, because we serve a really great domestic mission. We do lots of humanitarian relief, disaster relief, that kind of thing. But we can also get called up to active duty status for deployments and contingency operations, mostly because all of the training is the same across the board. So, no kidding, if something were to pop off, all of our training is the same, and we'd be there to support the country in a federal status as well.
So when I think National Guard, I think Army, right? But is the Air National Guard part of the Air Force or part of the Army?
So the National Guard is actually the oldest branch of the military. That's why if you've ever seen a National Guard emblem, it's the Minuteman. So it dates all the way back to the birth of the country. The Minutemen were militia members, basically. So, like I said, we are there's a slight distinction because we are state funded and localized. Each state has their own Guard component. But under the umbrella of the Guard, there's the Army Guard and then the Air Guard, which is what I'm in here in Georgia.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, so once you got your wings, you became certified to fly with the Guard. Did you get to pick your airplane?
Yeah, so that's actually one of the unique benefits of being a Guard member. There's nothing that says you have to live in the state where you want to fly, but basically, if you're pursuing a flying slot in any Guard unit, you can basically look up which units are hiring. Could be anywhere in the United States, any airframe actually, and you can apply to their boards. And you do have to have a resume with flying time and letters of recommendation and all that kind of stuff. But the advantage of the Guard is I knew throughout the entire process that I was coming back to Georgia to fly the C-130. But for somebody who lives in a different state, you can look up what airframes are available in your state if you want to stay local, or you can, if you don't have anything tying you down geographically, if you're not married or kids or whatever, you can really just put applications in with anybody who's hiring anywhere on the network and go fly F-16s down in Florida, over in Alabama, F-35s, different cargo carriers, the whole works. So that is definitely the advantage of the Guard, is I knew exactly where I was going and I knew exactly what I was going to fly.
Does you picking the C-130 put you in a better position to fly commercial jets after the fact as opposed to anything else? Or is there any advantage to that, to where after you're done serving or while you're serving, because you're in the Guard and it's a, on-off thing, could you go, more easily get a job at Delta flying commercial jets?
So traditionally the airlines have hired military members from pretty much any airframe just because of the quality of our training is so intense. They value that, the training pipeline. I will say that there are still basic hour requirements to get hired by one of the major commercial carriers, Delta, American. So in terms of building the time that's required to be competitive to get hired by Delta, I would say the C-130 airframe is probably not the best way to build that time, just because we don't do as much flying as, say, a C-17 or a KC-135 doing aerial refueling. On average, I can probably expect to fly somewhere between 150 and 200 hours a year on a good year. Whereas C-17s, where all they do is fly back and forth from Charleston, for example, over to Germany and back, they're racking up hundreds and hundreds of hours a year. So, no matter what airframe you're flying, it definitely is going to give you a leg up for the application process for the airlines. But in terms of organically building hours in the C-130 to meet those minimums, there's definitely other airframes that'll get you there faster. But the flying that we do is unlike any other platform in the entire Air Force. Overall, the mission of the C-130 is pretty incredible. We do everything. So yeah, it's a great. I guess you could probably make the quality versus quantity argument. The quality of the flying that we do is intense and it's really good. But we just don't fly the mega hours like some of the other airframes will.
Right. Well, we wanted to somehow, I don't know if you're going to be able to describe this, but I want you to somehow describe what in the world it feels like, being responsible for it's not the wheel. What do you say?
The yoke.
The yoke.
Yeah, in the cookpot. Yeah.
Okay.
Behind the yoke.
Behind the yoke of a C-130. What does this feel like to take off in this thing? I mean, it's got to be incredible. I don't know if you can describe that to us.
Yeah, it's pretty unreal. I mean, it's definitely a big airplane. Flying with a crew is great. On legacy models, we fly H models, slicks. So we have a pilot, a co-pilot, a flight engineer, a navigator, and at least one loadmaster as the basic crew component for any flight. So, the experience of flying with a crew is great. The thing is a torque monster. I mean, it's got just an unbelievable amount of torque behind it. Despite its size, it's actually quite nimble. Our bread and butter is flying low levels where we're flying 250 knots at 300 feet off the ground, sometimes on night vision goggles, low to the ground. It's pretty amazing, basically being able to discern individual leaves on trees or being able to pick out, the exact number of cows that are in a pasture down below you
Nice.
as you're cruising by at 230 knots.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of people actually really love the C-130, because I think it's one of those planes that we get to see a lot of, like more up close. Because
you get to see it and hear it. I mean,
Yeah.
like you guys, I live a couple miles as the crow flies from the local air base, and those C-130s, they rattle my windows like once a week for a couple hours at night, just like one after the other, man.
You can hear them coming, that's for sure.
It's awesome. Yeah, and they're so low to us that you really get a good look. So they're super impressive. Could you give us some more? So, I mean, we talked about the capabilities of the plane. You're not doing the long overseas missions or anything, but tell us some of the like really unique mission types that you guys get to go on as C-130 pilots.
So just from a general sense, I mean, the C-130 fulfills the tactical portion of the airlift mission. And basically what that means in layman's terms is, we do a lot of airdrop. We can put a lot of personnel and equipment on very small pieces of dirt. We can land on unimproved surfaces. Basically we're looking at airstrips that are 60 feet wide and about 2,000 feet long. And we can get a fully loaded aircraft stopped in that space. So
dirt runways you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. Dirt, LZs, landing zones. And then obviously the airdrop aspect of it, we can kick stuff out of the back of the airplane, whether it's cargo or personnel. And we can actually even do that in the weather. So we don't need the visual references of being able to see the ground in order to kick stuff out of the back of the airplane.
Kicking personnel out the back door in weather. That sounds unpleasant for the personnel.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. We wanted to ask you about, unloading, I guess, soldiers by, parachute. That would be kind of cool.
Like a tank with a parachute on it?
Yeah. Have you ever dropped that payload before, like training missions?
Yeah, so we do a lot of training, especially here in Georgia. We've got Hunter Army Airfield right here in Savannah. There's Pope Army Airfield up in North Carolina. And then Fort Benning, over in Columbus. All three of those are big Army bases with a big airborne Ranger component. So we'll do lots of personnel airdrops with them. We get other training out of it as well. They'll give us different loads, whether it's, tanks or trailers or howitzers or pallets full of ammo or whatever, training bundles, where we can, take that stuff up and put it on a piece of dirt within plus or minus 10 seconds of a time on target, a TOT. So, yeah, I mean, it is a very versatile mission. We'll get stuff where it needs to go on time.
Give us an idea, like how many tanks can you fit on this thing? So
like a big tank like that, we'd probably only put one in there just based on the weight. I think the biggest thing that we have moved recently, somewhat recently in Savannah is, I don't know if you've ever been out to a big airport and seen the firefighting vehicles that they use, but those ARF trucks, ARF firefighter vehicles.
They have like the hose cannon on it?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. That thing basically took up every square inch of the back of a C-130. So
how many Humvees are we talking?
Probably just the one Humvee. Again, it's kind of based on weight and the center of gravity. But we could also probably put some smaller stuff on there that could be kicked out sequentially as well.
He could have told me 30 Humvees and I'd be like, that sounds about right.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier, how often you fly, and what was that again? You said like 100 to 200 hours a year. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I think, as a guardsman, if you're hitting 150 hours a year, you're probably doing pretty good. Back in the early days of, post 9/11 deployments, those guys were obviously deploying a lot at a much faster rate. And honestly, for the past 20 years or so, the Guard is operating kind of in a capacity that it was never designed to operate in. Because like I said, your pilots that fly in the unit are probably your Delta pilot as well. So most everybody, has got a civilian job. So the ops tempo has slowed down a good bit. We do still deploy. Yeah, especially as a new guy, relatively fresh back from training. They're trying to keep us, flying at least once, twice a week to get those training lines in, keep the proficiency up, learn the airplane, learn the airspace, and just kind of get good at the seat that we're sitting in.
Yeah, and that's probably, has to do with Dave's question earlier, because he was hinting at, hearing these planes all the time. Dave, you can ask the question.
Well,
like why?
So I was just curious why did I feel like it's one plane like every 2 minutes from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock every Thursday night. Like, why is it so many planes for so freaking long, just one after the other after the other?
Yeah, so if it's anything like here in Savannah, they're probably doing just pattern work. It could be just pilot proficiency stuff, or more than likely, those guys are on night vision goggles hitting the assault strip. We can dual log a lot of stuff. So the stuff that we fly at night also counts for our day currency requirements, but it doesn't go the other way around. So the stuff that we fly during the day obviously doesn't dual log for the night currency requirements. So that's why definitely a lot of the flying that we do is at night. And, the C-130, I think, has the second most annual currency requirements out of any airframe in the inventory, second only to the F-16. And again, it just goes back to the versatility of the platform. We do air to air, we do air to land, air drop. So yeah, to keep all those boxes checked off on a monthly, semi-annual, and annual basis, it just takes a lot of flying.
Every time you talk about flying at night on night vision goggles, I get jealous. If I were doing that, I'd be like, I don't know why they're letting me do this.
There's one thing I want to do, and this may be completely cheese. Okay, so guys, wait with me here. Chase, can you give us like your lingo? Let's say you're flying in somewhere.
Oh, jeez.
No, I want to hear this because he's already kind of like throwing around some lingo and stuff. So like, what's that string of, you're coming in, you're talking to the air traffic controller. What would the air traffic controller hear? I'm putting you kind of on the spot.
Yeah, no. Probably one of the most unique things about military flying versus civilian is, every unit is going to have either a call sign or a series of call signs. So for us in Savannah, we're the Georgia Guard dogs. So all of our call signs, anytime we talk to air traffic control, it's using our call sign. So that's probably the most glaringly obvious difference there. But, again, since, for us in Savannah, we share the airport with Savannah Hilton Head International Airport. So even though we have our own little ramp on the airport, we're talking to civilian controllers all the time. So, once you learn the aviation language, it's pretty consistent, whether you're a military aviator or a civilian aviator or just, a hobbyist or a private pilot. Once you kind of learn that language, which I will say it is definitely a language of its own, but the phraseology is pretty consistent across the board. And that's true even internationally. I mean, English is the standard aviation language in most parts of the world.
So when you say something like Georgia Guard dog coming in hot, that's how the Savannah Airport would distinguish you from your typical commercial pilot.
Yeah, and we're, especially domestically, we're always under radar control. The controllers can see us on their scopes, their radar scopes. So typically when we're making first contact, we'll just give them a basic position report. So it'll sound something like, good evening, Savannah approach, dog 99, 20 miles to the northeast with whatever the weather information is, and then you'll state your request. So it's just that canned phraseology. It doesn't really deviate. And, if things deteriorate or if things aren't going well, if you have an emergency, it never, ever hurts to revert back to just plain English. And you can just basically have a conversation, because at the end of the day, air traffic control is there to help you.
That's always good info. If we could zoom out a little bit, as we've kind of gone down into the details about being a pilot, but if someone maybe didn't necessarily want to be a pilot, but they want to serve, what are the general requirements for like the Georgia National Guard, the Air National Guard, as far as hours commitment? Like if you're not a full time,
yeah. So just
age,
like in a general sense,
like that, yeah.
I would say the basic requirements are you have to be able to pass a background check or hold a security clearance. You have to be in a decently good physical fitness level. Especially for aircrew members, there's a number of medical disqualifying factors. All of that information is pretty publicly available online. If somebody's serious about it, there's resources that'll tell you what may or may not be a disqualifying factor. And then in terms of pilots, I think they just upped the age waiver you have to be in your first day of pilot training by your 32nd birthday, I believe. But, the beauty of the Guard is, and really the military in general is kind of a saying is there's a waiver for everything. So, if you get an in with somebody, if you get an in with a unit and you find somebody who's willing to go to bat for you and push the paperwork, you basically just have to make them tell you no. If you have a desire to serve and you're committed to making that a reality, then it's just, finding a unit that's the right fit and somebody that's willing to kind of push the paperwork for you.
Okay, good deal. Well, I really appreciate your time, Chase. And we've got a bonus segment coming up. And Chase is actually going to be handling that and asking us some trivia questions, I assume, about C-130s. But I don't even know. I left it open-ended for him. So we just got to wait and see what Chase asks us. So we'll be prepared for that, listeners, and we'll be back after the break. Do you have an idea for a website that you've just been sitting on forever and ever and just can't get it off the ground? Well, maybe website hosting and domain name registration and all these things kind of confuse you. They did me at one point in time, but I've been using getsimple.net for years. Hosting your website can be really complex, such a hassle, but not when you go to getsimple.net. Whether you need hosting for something specific like WordPress or you need to register a domain name, Simple Source Solutions can help you dump the stress and get back to doing what makes your business great. Simple Source is your trusted hosting provider for all your hosting needs. We've got a promo code for you guys. So to get started, visit getsimple.net and use promo code YCM for 10% off your order. That's promo code YCM at getsimple.net. All right, guys, welcome back. Chase has got some trivia questions for us. Now, I left this open-ended for him. I'm assuming that it has to do with aviation, but I don't know, guys. But Chase has got a few questions for us. So we'll do it like we normally do with trivia, where your name is your buzzer. So, guys, you gotta shout out your name if you want to answer. And let's try to let him finish the question before we answer it.
Got it.
Now, this gives our listeners a chance to say what they think.
And let us know if they're multiple choice, too.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I tried to keep them. They're all military aviation related. Some of them are going to be a little more difficult and some of them maybe a little easier. But yeah, we'll kick it off. So first one I got is, under which president or during which conflict was the Army Air Corps created?
Tim.
Which is basically the predecessor to the Air Force.
Tim. Truman.
It was before that. It was
Before that?
Yeah.
You think so? I don't
because
think
Truman
so.
dropped the bomb.
I know, but we're talking like the Air Guard, though. You'd think that.
Yeah, that was
This is big Air Force.
the Navy.
Boom, big Air Force.
Oh,
son.
big Air Force. Oh.
And
okay.
we're back into
Sorry.
presidents that I don't know. I'm going to say that.
So what about which conflict?
After Lincoln.
Oh, yeah, which conflict?
Oh, which conflict? I don't know. World War One?
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, I would have said I was
Okay.
going to say World War One.
Okay.
Yeah, World War I, Woodrow Wilson in 1926 was kind of the birth of what would eventually become the United States Air Force.
Dave, the Revolutionary War.
Okay, I was confused because I thought you were talking about specifically the
Come on, Tim, keep
State Guard or something like that. Okay, next
So,
question.
all right, next one I got. Which Air Force platform dropped the largest bomb ever made?
Now, when you say platform, you mean airplane, right?
Dave, the B-52.
Josh, C-17.
Oh man, I don't have a clue. So go ahead.
Josh, B-2.
So this one might be surprising. It was actually the C-130.
There you go.
Oh,
Trick
dang.
question. Diabolical.
It's special operations special operations variant of the C-130. It's known as the Moab, the mother of all bombs.
Nice.
I bet it wasn't flying low and slow on that one.
Nope.
Right.
Is that the kind of thing you just kick out the back door also?
Yeah, they basically treat it like an airdrop. It's
Dang.
just, instead of a gift of beans and bullets, it's a...
It goes underground.
Exactly. 2017 against ISIS.
Yeah, I remember seeing the videos of that.
nice.
thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, maybe
We're doing
this one will
really
be a
well
little
on this.
easier. All right, the first pilot to ever break the sound barrier in an aircraft.
Dave, Chuck Yeager.
Classic.
Ding, ding, ding.
Nice.
I got nervous as I was saying it. I was like, oh.
He died
Yeah,
last
recently,
year,
right?
Last year.
Yep.
Yeah. Rest in peace, Chuck.
Yep. 1947, flying the X-1, which 767 miles per hour is Mach 1.
That's cooking.
That is definitely cooking.
That was at
All
a
right,
time when they thought the plane would literally come apart.
Yeah, they didn't know what was going to happen.
Well,
All right, next one, and this is kind of a contested one, but maybe I can explain it afterwards. What is the world's second largest air force, or who is the world's second largest air force?
Josh, U.S.
Ding, ding, ding. It's actually the U.S. Navy.
Oh,
okay.
All right.
I see what
So
you
in
did
terms
there.
of in terms of total
holy cow!
assets that fly,
So we have the first and am I understanding that right? The largest and the second largest.
that's correct.
Wow! Holy cow! Don't mess with the U.S.
That's right. We definitely have global air superiority, which is why the conventional warfare is not what it used to be in World War II, or even some of the subsequent conflicts. It's no longer getting entrenched. It's the U.S. comes in with air superiority, and that's how we basically
We come
control the
to
fight.
you.
Yeah.
All right, this one might be a little more. This is the last one I got. I'll just throw it out there, and you can see one way or another. Who was the only person to serve as a 5-star general in both the Air Force and the Army? And he was actually flight instructed by the Wright brothers.
What?
What? Tim Patton?
Wow.
I don't know.
He was
Once again, decades off.
Okay, yeah, you're right. You're right. Well, I don't know. I mean, he was.
It was a good guess. I'm not even.
No, he would have been like a kid.
I'm not even going to
Yeah.
hazard a guess.
I don't know, man. I just threw it out there.
Yeah, no, this one I figured was going to be kind of tough. It's actually Henry Hap Arnold, General Hap Arnold.
It was on the tip of my tongue.
Well, Chase, thank you so much for your time this evening on the show with us.
And your service.
And yeah, I was telling the guys that if I was a younger dude and I was listening to this and I was like, hey, that sounds interesting, I would be really interested to hear the story. And so I'm glad that you shared it with us. And thank you so much for your service. And that's going to wrap up this week's show. Remember, we're every other week now, guys, and make sure to check out our Facebook group page. And we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Thanks.